Aloha and mahalo for joining us for yet another Late Nights with Hawaiian Mike. I've asked Mike Kumukahu Lee to come back into the Olelo studio here in Waipahu to revisit the sinkholes of the rail transit and talk about how things have unfortunately progressed and gotten worse, and all of the latest updates connected to the rail transit developments that have been happening here on Oahu. Mike, thank you so much for joining us.
Mahalo, Mike.
I appreciate it. You got a lot of pieces of paper on the table today. You've been very busy, and for good reason, because we talked about these sinkholes because you went to visit them and you found them fairly close to the Kahimohala area back in May of 2015. And recently you went back in May of 2016, and things have gotten worse.
Yes, unfortunately, we are recognized consulting parties to the programmatic agreement, which they're mandated to have by the federal government. And last year in September, we had gone on a site visit because we had brought up about sinkholes appearing when they put in their pylons around February of 2015, and then they got worse in May. They got to 2 feet, and then when we did a on-site visit in September of 2015, they were up to 8 feet. And so the engineer for the rail basically said, oh, this is filled land, and this was erosion. And I'm going, if it's filled land, it's only filled 4 feet. It's not filled 40 feet. So for people who are not aware of what we're talking about Farrington Highway, and these are Google Earth pictures, and we're talking about Farrington Highway where the historic Honouliuli Bridge is. And what we're talking about is when they put their pylons there, these satellite pictures showed there were no sinkholes. After, in fact, these pictures show that they have the concrete fixtures being placed on the side of the road with no sinkholes by the historic Honouliuli Bridge next to Kahimohala before the sinkholes happened. Now,
This is my favorite picture here. This clearly shows what appears to be sinkholes.
Yes, that was from the site visit that was generated with a report about those sinkholes, and they're 8 feet deep. So it started in February. By May, it was 2 feet. 4 months later, it was 8 feet deep. And so they basically were kind of covering it up by saying, oh, it's just filled land, and there was erosion that took place. Then I went back. They never revisited. I went back, and this is the aggregate, the blue aggregate that they filled the sinkholes with. And you can see the holes opening up over here, okay? And not just where the sinkholes are reopening up as sinkholes, but around their bermed areas, around the bermed areas of where they put their blue aggregate, it's opening up, it's cracking around the areas that they put, looks like sand bags around to mark the designation area. It's sinking inside, and it's cracking and sinking outside. So guess what? The problem has gotten greater. So what I did was I immediately shot out an email to CEO Dan Grabowskis and the KAKO2, Tricia Watson, saying, hey, there's a real problem. You have to revisit this because the health and safety of people below on Farrington Highway by the bridge, this site that we're talking about, okay, is Farrington Highway. This is Ho'opili on this side that my finger is pointing to. That's Ho'opili. That's an easement here alongside. There's an easement along Farrington Highway where they put the pillars, pylons, piers. And when they did their September report, when we took them up, they just said, oh, nothing. and here's the strata. They gave a geotech report of what it looked like underground. But my point is, you have this historic gulch, Honouli'uli Gulch and Bridge. You have water flowing, but you have water flowing subsurface in a subsurface stream. We saw that happen in 2013 in Florida, where this guy's house got completely sucked down with him in it. They never found him. They buried him. And a year later, what they buried also sucked down because the stream was still running underneath. The source that pulls all of that soil is still there. Now, what happens if there is a mom sometime in September, October, November, or December of 2016? We're filming this show, by the way, just to let you know, on June 12th, Monday. So we want it time-stamped, because what happens if a mom and her 4 kids and one in a little seat, child protective seat, is going down Farrington Highway. Big rain has come, and it's about 40 feet. The land that is got these sinkholes is 40 feet above. We get a big rain because we're going into a La Nina year. We get this big rain after summer. The Ho'opili is saturated. All this water is coming down, and all of this land goes right over, it erodes right over people driving on Farrington Highway, and they're asphyxiated before they can be dug out. Who's going to live with that crap? And by the way, when I wrote to Dan Grabowskis and the Kako'o, Dan Grabowskis, it's been over a month, has never acknowledged the letter, number one. We had a meeting with the Kako'o 2, which is Tricia Watson, in May, which we're going up to another month. It's 3 weeks already. And I put down what needed to be done and what needed to be checked on to have a hydrologist, geologist, and engineers do a testing for the purpose of underground water that is moving, causing continual sinkholes. And not just in this area, but sinkholes are appearing when they put up pylons next to the Kroc Center by UH West Oahu, where the old flamingos used to be. There is, to the Makai side, a cemetery.
The one that had all the sinkhole
The
problems.
sinkhole problems opened up at the same time on Cam 4 when they started putting the pylons by Don Quixote and Long's Drugs. And so that opened up. But remember, it's opening up because they're diverting the underground waterways, which I told them about in November 12, 2011, 5 years ago, in emails to their archaeologists. And for the Ho'opili Land Use Commission on 2012, April, I testified and showed where the caves were. And the Shark God Caves, I told them it goes right under their proposed Honouli'uli train station. And what people don't know is Honouli'uli train station, UH West Oahu, and everything before Halava is called Phase 1. They have no cultural monitors. And I believe that what I said, both in D.R. Horton's Land Use Commission in 2012, April, I testified under oath, and what I said to the Kako'o about that land in the underground caves going back to 2011, and in a report going back to 2013 to FTA of the Shark God Caves running under there, and into the federal district court, Slater's lawsuit, that I stated again and again, there's a cave down there. If they open that up, I'm afraid they just dump concrete and say, oh, we don't know anything, because they're putting their head in the sand and they're pretending. So we generated letters, one to the Honorable Douglas Chin, Attorney General, on telling them that the rail is basically putting the public at risk for health and safety because of these sinkholes, and giving our initial email, which has not been responded to for over a month, and to City Prosecutor Keith Kaneshiro. We also certify registered mail for these two parties to inform them of what is happening and inform them that there is depraved indifference. And one of the reasons I believe is that the rail does not have a project manager. You got Dan Grabowskis at the top, but you don't have a guy who's on site, who knows the laws, who knows the contracts, and there's no gray areas, cost money and lives. And this is one of the gray areas that's falling through the cracks.
You just mentioned Attorney General and City Prosecutor. Is that because you feel that these concerns are now getting to a criminal level?
I do believe that because we're, as I mentioned, this year in 2016, for 2 years, we've had El Nino events, which is kind of 2 years of El Nino. Now we've gone into a La Nina event where the waters around Hawaii are cool. However, the waters around California are still warm. So it's expected after summer, and we notice it's not as muggy and hot summer as it's been for the last 2 years. It's rainy, actually. So my fear is that we get into October, November, or September, October, November. Heavy rains happen by Ho'opili, and you have this event. Now, I failed to mention that one other site is by Leeward Community College, where the Kahiuka Shark God Cave is. And there are 4 sinkholes opening on the berm on H1 freeway, Diamond Head bound, where they put that huge rail bridge over by Leeward Community College, okay, to the Mackay side of the berm over H1 going Diamond Head side. Several sinkholes are opening 10 feet deep. And that's another possible tragic event that could happen. And I put it in my email to Dan Grabowskis and the Kako on the 11th of May, which they haven't responded to.
And the reason for your concern about sinkholes is that you feel that, well, actually, people have shown me pictures of cracks in the cement rail overlays. You can see it cracking. So you're saying that because the pylon underneath is moving, they're bending, they're flexing too much.
Yes, what's happening is they have to Kiewit, which is the company that certifies, they certify structural soundness and stability. Some of these pylons, piers, are 200 feet deep. Some of them are 90 feet deep, depending. They have to certify that there's no caves or voids so that it is strong. But you're talking about tons of concrete over the land of hollow depths. And what do I mean by that? Especially in Ewa, they used to be hundreds of thousands of years ago when the water was higher, okay, and the North Pole and South Pole was melted, and the Sahara Desert was a tropical rainforest. What happened was you had reefs that were growing for thousands of years. And then when the ice ages came and the water receded, you had more reefs, but on lower levels. So you have in Ewa, Honouliuli, reefs that go, maybe about 2 miles in, ancient reefs that plateau over a million years. So what's happening is with these pylons, they're so heavy, they're crushing, okay? And what they're doing is they sink. Instead of doing light rail, they chose to do heavy rail. And they really don't know what's going on there because we're seeing signs of, in their construction corridor, of direct, indirect, and cumulative damage of what happens when you put up pylons and you divert underground water flows. They didn't do soundings to see if there were streams under there. They presumed they weren't there. So going on that presumption that is faulty and cause and effect, sinkholes are now showing when they put the pylons. We have satellite photos that show they weren't there before the pylons. After putting the pylons, they show up in 4 different places. And I've asked that we go out with hydrologists, engineers, and geologists to say something is happening here. I said it was going to happen. It's happening now for the health of the workers and the general public, in the public good and in the public interest. You need to know, you need to do this work so that there are no gray areas because it costs lives.
Could this be part of the overrun costs that they're talking about? Because we started around 5 billion, we're now somewhere around 8.6 billion.
The answer is yes. In fact, Kiewit, their major go-to people are not renewing their contract, which is going to be coming up. That tells you something. In fact, one of the heads of Kiewit begged out about a year ago. They know stuff that the general public doesn't know. And the reason why is the rail puts people on short-term contracts for labor force week to week, for engineers month to month. Why do they do that? They want it perfectly clear in this beehive of bureaucracy, don't mess up the apple cart. Because if you do, you're gone. Your contract is not renewed. They can't sue them for breach of contract if the contracts are monthly or weekly. So Dan Grabowskis, who's the CEO, he's pretty much gone in the sense of the overruns. And now they're trying to cut the cost by cutting the rail, not going all the way in, but just going up to Middle Street. Before it was going to Ala Moana, now it's not even going to go to Ala Moana because we went from 6 billion, now it's shooting up to 9 billion. Everything they give was a bill of goods. Build it fast, build it quick. So what they call is vested interest. We can't stop now. We put all these billions of dollars in. We got to go all the way. And it was a bill of goods to the concrete companies and the banks for TODs. And this was development, transit-oriented development for mortgages and for 40 years of union contracts and mortgages to build houses. If we really wanted to move people, $200 million to the bus company, every 15 minutes buses would be there, and they move much bigger people. How many people are going to be able to afford the rail at what it's, as my brother says, he says, we're going to have a rail that's about 28 miles long. You get on the rail and you walk your way to the next rail station because this thing is a colossal mess. It's one of the biggest consumers of electricity. It's sinking in many locations. Their own reports, their own engineering reports show the misalignment that's taking place of all the people that you're talking about, witnessing the cracks, the falling apart. This is a mess. And I told them it was happening. And one thing here, one of the biggest messes that are setting up is downtown, where you get to Richard Street. When First Hawaiian Bank tore down their old bank in 1992, they didn't realize when they went to dig the foundation, they couldn't find the bottom. Underneath, in the old maps of 1810, there was a pond there. Below that area is a Carlsbad cavern underneath the ground. And it was probably a lava tube for punch bowl. And the bottom line was they couldn't secure a bottom. It took them 4 months of pouring liquid concrete. They were penalized because they were staying in a building that they had to stay longer. And so all of this was covered up. But guess what? Mackay side is where they plan to put those pillars, pylons, and piers from Richard Street and Alakea. What's going to happen when they get down there? Because the same thing, the same underground cave pattern is there. And we put in like several gigabytes of information in their EIS. It's not that this is inadvertent. We told them. We were part of the COCO programmatic agreement. We told them what stipulations that they were violating, 9, 12, we 3. We went and gave specifics. They don't want to listen.
Well, I guess in this current situation, they don't feel it's in their best interest to listen. There are definitely some people making a lot of money currently, and it looks like they're starting to rotate people in and out on short-term contracts. So if you bring bad news to leadership, then you just let go.
Well, guess what? This is a notice that I gave to the Heart Rail back in May 11th, 2012, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 4 years ago, when they just started putting the pylons at Ho'opili. And I asked them, what kind of water did you incur drilling those pylons? They're getting federal money. They're supposed to tell when a FOIA comes out what's going on. They refused in the beginning, before the bad news. They refused, okay? That tells you the mindset and protectionism from the very beginning, okay? So what happens if it costs lives? I'm hoping that all the people I put online from emails, and by the way, we recorded all of the meetings that we had, the quarterly meetings when we brought this up, the Kako'o meetings when we brought this up, because their minutes are willfully lacking of the severity and intensity and to push it quickly. They don't respond to us. They don't give us accurate emails. We've recorded these conversations, and now we put the Attorney General and the city prosecutor on the hook. If you don't do your job, you're liable as well. And what we're doing is what the Attorney General is supposed to do, which was to look out for the health and safety in the public good and in the public interest for the public, their health and safety. And this has been woefully lacking. We sent this out to KITV and other press. We sent these emails out to Mayor Caldwell and to Michael Gabbard and to Pine, who is the city council person out there. So we've notified everybody in due diligence with due care and due time before any disaster happens. And if it does, may God and the public put all their heads on a silver platter because they were willfully indifferent to the health and safety of the general public.
Is there an answer of what they could do to rectify this problem?
Yes, we had a meeting with Kako'o in May, and she said, well, what do you want us to do? I said, I want a site visit for all of these sinkholes. I want it videotaped. I want geologists there. I want hydrologists, those people study water. I want a geologist there. I want a report specifically with a goal and intent. What is the underground water situation that is taking place? And if you have to do soundings, ground penetrating radar, you must do it because cause and effect is showing up. The Google Earth satellite pictures showed that before you put in your pylons, these sinkholes weren't there. And after you put it in, they showed up. Cause and effect, A plus B equals C. You can't put your head in the sand and pretend nothing is happening. So then I want follow-ups. The rail, as you brought out your favorite picture, refused to do a follow-up of these 8-foot sinkholes above Kahimohala, the historical Honouliuli Bridge by Kahimohala, 40 feet above Farrington Highway. This is gross negligence, and this is because they do not have an online project manager as the go-to person. Grabowskis isn't there when they're pouring concrete. Grabowskis isn't walking the land and seeing what's out there. He comes in after the fact. And we need a project manager to ensure the health and safety. Remember, gray areas cost in the spine of this project money and lives. And we're trying to prevent that. There's no other watchdog making sure that the health and safety and folks are being looked after.
I did see a quick clip of the engineering professor from UH, and they asked him, so what are you saying? We should just scrap this project? And he said, yeah, it's going to cost too much. It's not going to deliver what they promise, and you should quit while you're ahead.
Yeah.
Well, I guess we're actually behind.
Yeah. You know what this is? I joke about it. That, remember, Pearl Ridge has its little monorail. Hello, yeah. This is a monorail from UH West Hawaii to Pearl Ridge, you know. I mean, they're building it in Halava and going down, and wait until they get to the Sharkat Cave by Halava, by Halava Stream, which I've warned about. You know, what happens if this, what I say, becomes a grim reality? You know, my fear is they want to cover this stuff up because remember what I said, phase 1 has no cultural monitors. And right now, from the beginning 4 years ago when the pylons came up on Ho'opili land and I put the FOIA, they said, we didn't find water from pylon 76 and to pylon 89. And I said, what about the pylons in between that you're not telling me? So there's a lot of cover up here. And it's not good for the folks out there who are paying for it, the taxpayers. You paid for it twice. You paid for it by federal and now city taxes that are taxing everybody on this, and the taxes are going to stay longer and are going up to pay for this, and maybe your grandchildren are going to end up paying for this. And there's still no project manager to make sure no gray areas, cost in money and lives.
It's like a report that I saw, and this is happening all across the United States, that governors and mayors are just paving over bad infrastructure and just praying that it holds. And now we have this multi-billion-dollar rail project, and they just say, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it.
It would be divine retribution that if anything horrible did happen, that one of the higher-ups, their family, would be on Farrington Highway when the easement area gave way and tons of earth fell on their car, and their gross not caring and indifference were to cause their own families' lives. You can't unring that bell. You can't undo that. There's still time. This is why we're coming on your program. It's June 12th, Monday. There's still time. And that's what we're out here. And I want a copy of this tape that goes in this evidence packet, because hopefully one day this won't have to go to court for poor families that lost precious loved ones.
I'd like to thank Mike Kumukahu Lee for joining us today here in the Olelo television station to give us an update on the report of the sinkholes caused by rail, and encourage our viewers to keep in contact with us, send us video and pictures of cracks in the rail that they're seeing, and also to get involved in the process. If you're working on your PhD or your master's degrees, these are projects that can be looked into for your dissertation. I would like Mike to come back, and we're going to go ahead and talk about the need to protect the pu'eo owls out in this area of Ewa, and give us an update on the progress that you have been making in the community in order to protect our cultural heritage. Mahalo, Mike.
Mahalo, Michael.
I'm Michael Kia Nui Nui Goodrich, but my friends call me Hawaiian Mike. I'd like to say a special aloha to the fathers watching and taking care of their keiki as we are going into the Father's Day weekend coming up. And special mahalo. Aloha.